right, awesome. Good to see everyone. Today we have a very interesting topic. We're talking not just about AI, but about yields, which is very interesting for most of people here, I guess. But before we dive deeper, I wanted to give a chance to introduce you speakers, yourself and your project. Maybe start with you, Renç.
Perfect. So hello, everybody. My name is Renç. I am the CEO of Giza. At Giza, we create intelligent autonomous markets. And the reason why I'm on this panel is we have built the first financial autonomous agent in Web3 that focuses on yield, stablecoin yield optimization, around the clock, 24/7, personalized in a risk-adjusted manner. This agent has been live for the past 4 months. Every month, it has beat market APRs close to 20 to 30%. It has moved close to 200 million in volume. It has executed more than 150,000 financial decisions that are 100% profitable. So in this panel, I'll be on the side of AI-powered yield strategies. A pleasure to have you all.
Hey everyone, my name is Vikram. I'm one of the co-founders of Superform. We are a permissionless yield marketplace. We have over 70 protocols that have been listed on Superform, thousands of vaults across stablecoin strategies, ETH, BTC, and we also have our own products that we built on top of that, which are automated and managed through a pretty comprehensive framework of both risk and analyzing returns. So yeah, excited to be on this panel.
Hey everybody, I'm Lane. I do research at Near Foundation. I think most folks here probably know Near, but for anyone who doesn't, Near is a layer one that's been around for a while. It's a pretty big, pretty vibrant ecosystem. We have a pretty active DeFi ecosystem. Near was originally founded as an AI project, actually. Alex and Ilya, our two co-founders, were OG AI researchers, kind of back in the day, 2016, 17, 18. And they went off and built a blockchain to do some other things, and we're kind of now in the process, or well on the way of kind of, I mean, pivot is not the right word, but taking Near back to its roots as an AI project, basically, blockchain for AI. In the context of this kind of topic, we have a lot of AI infrastructure that I think would be very compatible with a lot of kind of the projects, the agentic stuff that you guys are building. And then I'm personally also working on a governance initiative right now that involves a lot of AI agents, and maybe yield generation will be a part of that. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, guys. Very interesting topic. It's probably a dream for many people there to have an AI autonomously trade and manage your DeFi to optimize for yields. Sounds like a dream use case, but really how achievable is this? How close you can get to the outcome, and what are the risks most importantly? So wanted to touch a little bit on the topics, and starting from a general question for all of you guys, like when building the AI systems, where do you draw a line between the automation and human oversight, right? Like, because you can delegate too much and give a lot of autonomy, but then the agents might do something wrong, and who is responsible for that? So how do you ensure proper controls and manage that? Maybe for you, starting with you, Renç.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. And I think it's a really good place to start to provide context to everyone on why we're talking about like AI-powered yield strategies. And I'll give you like a very simple explanation on why I think this matters. Throughout my whole life, one thing that I always realized over and over again, that if you're in a relationship, the best way to make that relationship the most constructive, the most productive, is that you let the other person who's better at something do what they're good at. And I'm sure all of you in this room have like wives, husbands, boyfriends and girlfriends. If my wife is better at doing something, I don't try to do it myself. That creates an anxiety in the house that you can avoid. That is a complete waste of time. And I'm sure many of you are parts of incredible teams that are building great things. And if you have a great engineer, you don't try to build something yourself. My co-founder is the best mechanism designer that I had to work with, so I don't do mechanism design. And he lets me do the things that I'm better at. And within this formation, there is like a fundamental gap between humans and financial markets. As humans, we are terrible at being profitable. I will ask all of you, maybe raise your hand if you have a round-trip position in DeFi. And it's very, very clear that we are emotional. The markets run 24/7, and we have to sleep, we have to eat. And we are terrible at digesting huge amounts of data and extracting value from it. While on the other hand, there is a much better entity that is far more superior than us on all of those things. So it's about, in this dilemma, putting the user and the human on a position what they're good at, which is orchestration and providing intent, and letting far superior intelligent agents do what they're good at, which is like digesting huge amounts of data, understanding value is, how to execute it precisely in milliseconds. So I would say that's where, for me, the magic happens. Humans orchestrate, and machines execute decision making.
I think the ceiling for agents to manage money well is far higher than that of humans, for sure. But I think what we have right now on chain is really a lack of good data for those agents to sometimes optimize on top of. And the agent's only as good as what you're actually putting into it. And if you look at most of investment management in TradFi, some of it's based on data, a lot of it's just based on how someone feels about something. It's based on a conversation that you have with somebody, seeing them in person. And a lot of that, even the vast majority of yields in DeFi right now, are not necessarily even what you see on chain, right? They're arrangements that have been formed between parties, and a lot of that stuff, it's how do you actually create a database for people for agents to actually figure out how to do something better than humans. But eventually when we fix the data problem, I know that agents are going to do this 100 times better than any human, for sure.
I agree very strongly with all the points you guys just made. I wanted to share a tiny anecdote, which is I started my career in traditional finance. I spent 6 years working at a really large hedge fund in New York and Hong Kong. And going into it, I was very naive about financial markets. And I had this image in my head that these like kings and queens of Wall Street, were brilliant mathematicians and this is a quant hedge fund, obviously. And they, could just like squeeze profits out of the market and stuff. And what I saw after being there for 6 years is exactly what Vikram just said, which is even kind of the brilliant geniuses, the quote unquote smartest guys in the room, to quote the title of a famous book, they really didn't know what was going on most of the time. And a lot of what we spent our time on at this hedge fund, we called it, I think it was called P&L attribution. So like we made money, but why did we make money and how did we make money? So also everything that you guys are saying about how AI agents have the potential to be much better investors than humans, it's fascinating because my primary focus right now is on AI tools for governance, which to be clear does include things like yield management, treasury management. We can touch upon that later if there's time. Humans are also really bad at governance for all the same reasons. We're really emotional. We have how do I put it? Like we have to factor in the fact that we're fallible, we're corruptible. We focus on self-interest. We have this principal agent problem, et cetera. And again, agents have the potential. AI agents have the potential to, I think, be much more efficient in governance as well. And then to the original question. I think this is the hardest question at all, right? Like, what is the role for humans in the loop here? And I've had fascinating conversations where I say that our vision at Near is to build the AI CEO, effectively, to just remove humans to the extent possible from the governance loop and the governance process for all the reasons we're talking about. And then the question I get is, okay, great, so you have this AI agent that's governing the protocol, but what happens when it breaks? What happens? I would call it kind of like when exceptions occur. If there's a bug in the system, if there's an exploit, if the AI acts in a way that you're not expecting, you still need an escape hatch right away for kind of humans to jump in and fix things. And then so the question becomes, how do you govern that? It's kind of like turtles all the way down. So I think that's the hard question that we're working on as well right now.
Yeah, it's indeed very hard to build a ideal system that will work 100% of the times around the clock. So a lot of the projects, a lot of the ecosystem still figuring things out. I wanted to double down on each of your guys' answers and maybe ask Lane on the current strategy for Near around yields, because you mentioned about the governance and you do a lot of work around that topic, and something you say lightweight governance. So I'm curious, what's Near's position about yield? Like, what's the strategy in the near term?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Near has historically been governed in a relatively centralized fashion by the Near Foundation. And there's a bunch of other ecosystem actors, of course, who are involved, right? And there were a few attempts previously, one in particular a couple years ago, called NDC, the Near Digital Collective, to basically build a DAO to govern the protocol, the ecosystem, et cetera, including things like investment. And it didn't go very well. A lot of mistakes were made. And so what we're working on right now, the project is called House of Stake. It's kind of like we're starting over, from first principles here, learning from the mistakes that were made in the Near ecosystem and other ecosystems. We're off to a really good start. At this moment, the treasury is completely managed in a centralized fashion by the Near Foundation. We have a finance team, professional, kind of finance executives who do that, and they do it really, really well. And so this is a very long-winded way of saying, actually, we haven't figured out the answer to this question yet. But we, again, want to, as we transition to kind of community-run governance and a DAO, of course, treasury management is a huge piece of that. We have not only the Near Foundation treasury, we have also a separate community treasury, which has tens of millions of Near tokens in it. So it's a substantial amount of money. And over time, gradually, control of that will be handed to the DAO in pieces. And treasury management is a big piece of that. So I think probably we should be honestly talking to you guys and utilizing, to your point a moment ago, this is not our expertise, but we need to figure out from our perspective, the governance piece of that, right? How do we decide not in a centralized fashion as a foundation, as a team of executives, but actually as a DAO, which tools are the right tools, how to allocate to them? I'd love to kind of have that conversation either here or later with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's deep dive on your protocol. Maybe you can tell more about it. You have a good stablecoin yield right now. So how do you achieve that kind of performance, and what's the current architectural challenges you're facing?
Yeah, perfect question. I was going to tell Lane, instead of giving to the DAO, you should give it to our agent, and we'll get you the best deal possible. This is how we currently onboard treasuries and institutions that we work with. Based on the thesis that I've just shared with you, there is a cognitive limitation to what humans can do on the markets, and markets have exceeded that a very, very long time ago. There is an infinite amount of resources for yield. Even the best DeFi expert, even the best treasury manager is having an incredible difficult time managing risk and exposure. So what we have built is an infrastructure that abstracts all of the DeFi infrastructure into a unified policy-driven assistant. This assistant manages your capital for you, it protects your capital for you, it grows your capital for you, and all while you sleep. And the main thesis behind this is the formation of the first agent that we deployed, which is Arma. And Arma works in a very simple user flow. It is the answer to the question that everybody's asking these days: how do I invest in stablecoins? And the way to invest in stablecoins should be very, very straightforward. You go to Arma, you deploy your capital, and that's all you need to do from your end. And then you set your parameters, and this parameterization is, I think, something super important for treasuries, for institutions, because what we provide in our infrastructure is every single person in this room gets their own agent. So you no longer have to put your own capital with a bunch of other random capital into a vault that moves at the same time, that works with not dynamic logic, but static loop-based algorithms. Instead of that, we'll give every single person an agent, and you will get to dictate what this agent should do for you based on your risk and capital requirements. Currently, we see this working 100%. 59% of our users are personalizing their agents. They choose which vaults they trust. They choose which risk environments that they have. And once you set these parameters up, then the agent is running. The agent is running, and then you don't have to do anything. The agent is scanning all of the protocols on base. It is calculating APRs for you. It is forecasting cost and profits. And the cost part is super important as much as the profit, even though as humans we don't take that into account. It is the fundamental component of being profitable. And our agent only executes when a trade or a strategy is deemed 100% profitable. So we will not spend your capital on ridiculous things like you would do as a human. We would make sure it is always in the most profitable position at all times, and you don't have to move your finger. And you won't lose money, and most importantly, you won't lose sleep. So we maximize two things in life that matters the most, the two currencies in life that matters the most, which is time and your money. And that's what we do.
Sounds like you have a lot of these things figured out, if not all. Sounds interesting. Would love to try it out as well after.
And anybody can go to arma.xyz and you can get yourself a stablecoin yield agent today that will beat the market for you over and over again while you sleep.
Fantastic. Maybe a next question to Vikram about your product. So you're launching the V2 of Superform. Maybe tell a little bit about that, and do you also plan to introduce some AI features and like some point of the roadmap? Like what's the timeline for you?
Yeah, our take on why we're shipping V2 is that DeFi is finally ready for people to be using this for what it is. The infrastructure is there, and we're going to meet people where they actually are, which is on mobile. That's the biggest part of what we're doing there. You onboard with smart accounts. You can access individual vaults, or you can set your own parameters. And actually, we'd love to dig into that, like what those actual risk parameters are for your retail user to try and figure out what's actually something worth filtering down investment opportunities on. Because I think the existing set of crypto users has mostly been maximize return. I don't really care about risk. Just give me like the 30% APY pool and put all my money in it. But I think the next set of users is probably gonna care a little bit more, and they're a little bit sussed out by stuff that's more than like a 10%, 15% yield. But yeah, V2 is gonna bring that all those tools to the average retail consumer, and we're gonna have our own super vaults that launch on top of that, which is really like a decentralized validator network around vault products, so that we can have the same flexibility that we've been used to in centralized vault products, but put that all on chain, and you could build agents and everything else on top of that. Yeah.
Okay, so you can use your kind of infra to plug into like agents and earn the yields.
Yeah,
that
so
way?
agents could actually write their own strategy, and then they could launch a vault and then have all the operational work of managing it be outsourced to this network, validator network.
Fantastic. And yeah, looks like it could save you some infrastructure work or Renç as well for you guys. Maybe there is some collaboration there. But that trickles down to the next topic I wanted us to touch, which is risk and risk management. So maybe curious to hear your thoughts first about the Renç. Like you said that your agents only execute trades when it's 100% profitable, but what else out there? What kind of other risk angles do you see for potential drawdowns and like maybe loss of funds? What basically still keeps you up at night when you're thinking about solutions?
Yeah, ever since the foundation of Giza, ever since the idea behind this infrastructure, that there's one thing that was fundamental to us, which is like security and control. How do you ensure that the user funds stay secure? How do you ensure that even you provide this unlimited intelligence and like automation, the users still feel in control? And those things came as an engineering requirement for us, rather than just like ethical guidelines. So we built our infrastructure based on this. So as Vikram also mentioned, there is a smart account component that is allowing you to be non-custodial. So you keep your funds, you keep your keys. The non-custodial part is non-negotiable. But besides that, we have this other primitive called session keys that allows you to make cryptographic boundaries to each and every single agent. So the agent only does what it's supposed to, because I think one of the biggest misconceptions around like trusting agents to run your funds and trusting AI to run your funds is everybody asking like, oh my God, is this agent going to run away with my money? Like, is it going to ape into some random protocol or XYZ? And that's like a very understandable misconception, because there's this huge narrative around like hallucination of AI, like doing things that it's not supposed to. Our agents are extremely boring by design. They do what they're supposed to, and they only do that, and they are great at what they're supposed to be doing. So that has been like the main thing that has been keeping us at night. How do we create an authorization layer that allows for constrained autonomy, And I think that's super important.
And how about like the strategy layer risk? Like you mentioned mostly about governance and key management autonomy risk, but 83% seems like a lot of yield. So does it involve some leverage? Like what's kind of risks on that side?
Yeah, it does not involve any leverage. The special sauce is continuous capital optimization. Whenever there's a better opportunity, in the market. The agent identifies it, it evaluates it, and if it fits your size, if it fits your requirements, it executes for you. So the special sauce is building an infrastructure that is as dynamic, as moving as the market itself. And once you have that, you can build anything on top of it. And the risks associated to it, we also have an extremely rigorous automated risk management within our agents. We consume all of the data from the protocols that we integrate with directly, and the data that we consume has everything, like TVL, utilization ratios, closation ratios, APRs, and the agent is keeping track of all of those metrics at all times. So whenever there's a peak or a drop in one of them, there are emergency protocols that can kick in immediately. So even if there is something that happens, the agent is still keeping you safer than yourself trying to do all of these things and interacting with all of these call functions.
Awesome. Maybe Vikram, what's your thoughts on the risk management strategies in DeFi farming? Like maybe tell us a little bit about your frameworks in Superform. How do you choose which protocols to integrate, which vaults? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned on agents being able to just like rebalance and get out of opportunities as soon as possible if there is something wrong is probably the biggest benefit that we see to having agents actually manage your capital right now. It's just monitoring really of the underlying position, because actually judging risk in any one of these pools is it's tough. It's a black box. There's going to be a whole industry that evolves around risk management on chain. You do have some protocols now that are like their entire job is to just grade pools. You have stuff like Fedora. I think they now work with Morpho for a lot of those for curators, and then you have Exponential, and I think we're gonna have a whole industry that comes in, even the trad space, and you're gonna have S&P type ratings for every one of those opportunities, and then eventually that can then be consumed by an agent to actually provide a little bit more than just us reading data on chain. But yeah, our risk framework is really dependent on the underlying yield opportunity. If it's lending, borrowing, we'll look at collateral markets. We'll look at what the current LTV of those things is. We'll do a little bit of DD on what that actual market is, and we'll run like Monte Carlo simulations and everything against that to make sure that things are behaving the way that they should. And we're effectively checking the work of the actual underlying protocols that are being managed. But yeah, long way to say, I think management of the position is the most valuable thing for an agent, which is very valuable because if you look at most of these curators, like it always looks good, and then there's one moment where you'd actually want to be taking your money out, and agents will do that. So, and then everything else, we're building that as we speak for risk management, scoring, and all that. So,
is that what you do at Super Vaults? Like, do you use these frameworks to reallocate, remanage positions? You think to use AI agents for that at some point?
Yeah. Again, it depends on the kinds of data that you can get on chain. And the thing that keeps me up at night is the stuff that we're getting from new pools or like new things that you might want to rebalance to. Eventually, there's a way to like game the AI, right? And you're kind of in a constant battle of trying to create the new tool to stop the bad AI from impacting your AI. And that's why a lot of our stuff isn't entirely automated, but as it goes end to infinity, I think everything will be managed by the agent.
Yeah, makes sense. And what's your take on it, Lane?
Yeah, I mean, as with a lot of the topics we're discussing here, I think my angle on this is, again, kind of community governance. And actually, Renç, I like what you were saying about parameterization, right? That you can set those parameters to reflect your appetite for risk, and maybe they change over time. I think one thing DAOs are actually really good at is parameterization. And in fact, the DAO that I'm a part of, the House of Stake project, one of the main goals is to govern the NEAR protocol itself, right? Which has a lot of parameters, right? We need to figure out what's the right. So we're not just consumers of yield, we're also producers of yield, because obviously NEAR is a proof of stake blockchain, and there's additional yield on top of the yield from running a validator or staking. There's now additional yield from the governance project as well. We're doing a vote escrow model, if you guys are familiar with that. So you lock your tokens, and then over time you earn yield, not financial yield per se, but yield in terms of your voting power going up over time. And so actually there's a bit of a fun kind of strange loop here where, again, we're both consumers of yield, maybe via the kind of things that you guys are building, but also producers in the part of the protocol. And so we need to kind of set those parameters, right? So this is, I'm sure folks here know there's a huge topic right now among all the L1 projects, including Solana, including Sui and Aptos. Obviously Ethereum, it's been a topic for a long time, like what is the right yield? How much should you earn for operating a validator or for staking? Celestia has a very aggressive proposal right now called Proof of Governance that we're excited about, where they're talking about dropping the yield into double-digit basis points, like 50 basis points, something like that. So we're actually, that's on the table for us at Near as well. We need to figure out if that's appropriate. But again, just coming back to the community governance piece, right? The DAO is designed so that we can aggregate the preferences of the community and figure out what the right parameters are for the protocol itself. And I think in the same fashion, right, if we get this right and we figure out what's the connective tissue, what's the interface, right? Because the products you guys are describing, it's hard enough from the perspective of like an individual investor. Like I have my own personal account, right? I need to set those parameters, and again, that's already challenging. Maybe we need some AI co-pilots to help with that. But doing it on the part of a community or a DAO is that much harder, right? Because again, we need to aggregate the preferences of many thousands of people in the ecosystem. And again, I think there's high potential here for us to kind of collaborate and see what that would look like. But if we can figure out how to present that to our community and have the community vote and express their preferences and say, we have this appetite for yield, that appetite for yield, and then connect that through some SDK, into kind of your protocol, I think that would that'd be a really exciting experiment and really potential for serious research there, I think.
Maybe that's where you double down on AI, just to categorize, aggregate all these opportunities and help decide on the community preferences.
One of the strategies we're thinking about is a swarm intelligence, and Renç, you mentioned this as well. You said one agent, everyone, you get an agent, you get an agent, you get an agent, Yeah, exactly. But this is our thought. We haven't finalized it yet, but we're thinking that the way that we use AI for decentralized governance is by having every ecosystem actor, every stakeholder have an agent acting on their behalf, expressing their preferences and aggregating those preferences. And so I think there's a financial component and a risk component here as well.
Gotcha. And you mentioned Near has external yield and also within the Near ecosystem as well. So would you look to allocate within the Near specifically, or are you looking for outside protocol, maybe some of the other cross-chain, maybe like Superform or Giza? Would you allocate to them?
Yeah, I mean, I always have to say up front that the decision is not up to me, it's up to the community, right? That's the whole point of decentralized governance. But I think we should look beyond Near, for sure. I mean, Near has, for a very long time, been we lean very heavily into cross-chain everything. We have a product called Chain Abstraction, which allows you actually to seamlessly, we also have an intense engine as well. These are some of the products at Near. So it actually allows you to seamlessly kind of move assets among chains and manage accounts across different chains using a single set of keys and a single wallet on the Near side, which is really exciting. And we have folks building products that are doing things like optimizing yield across many, many chains. This is another conversation that we should all have. But yeah, for sure. I mean, I think wherever the healthiest, we need to educate crypto investors about the Sharpe ratio. Basically, it's what you guys, I'm interpolating when you're saying, people traditionally the degens chase the highest yield regardless of risk. Of course, we need to understand that there's a risk component there as well. But wherever the highest risk-weighted return is where we should be looking for sure in the interests of the community, I think.
Sharpe ratio AI sounds like an
exactly.
idea for a new project. Okay, cool. I guess one of the last questions would be general questions for everybody. If there would be one architectural principle you believe that must exist in every AI-based kind of protocol on the yield, what would it be in order to avoid becoming the next bubble, pretty much? Maybe start with you, Renç.
Yeah, there's only two things that matter, which is security and reliability, and that's what you should engineer towards. If you're going to automate finance in the scale of billions, you should have an extremely secure product. You should have a reliable product that does what it's supposed to do, and those are the two things you optimize for. And then the performance iterations, the optimizations can come later, but security and reliability is the most important two things.
I'd throw in speed to that, and we've thought about some of the stuff around decentralizing the management of investment strategies, and maybe you have stuff like time locks around things so it's more secure. And there definitely is a design space to combine multiple things, but when it comes to yield, the speed at which you can execute and for changing parameters, like you don't want that to be under under a day-long time lock, because by the time that gets through, then something could have happened to the pool, and you really have no idea, no control over the performance of that. So yeah, I'd say that agents should be maximizing for speed, but not giving up security.
I would add, I agree with all those. I would add, keep it simple. I think this is like a really good design principle in general. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but I've noticed this behavior on the part of AI agents sometimes, like even when I'm just vibe coding using, Claude or OpenAI or whatever, they have a tendency to kind of dig themselves into very deep, complex, recursive loops. Like you build a thing and you ask it to build it and it mostly works, but there's an error and you point out the error and then it fixes it and it adds code. It has this tendency to just continually add complexity. And I wonder, so I think the safest yield generation strategies are going to be the ones you can understand and explain to your grandma, generally. That's like a good rule of thumb. And so I wonder if there isn't a way to instruct the agents, keep it simple, stupid, and if it's like getting too complex, just start over from first principles.
The grandma test, yeah. Each agent needs to comply with that before it gets deployed. That's the rule. I guess to wrap things up, the maybe last minute suggestion, because we have a lot of projects and builders out there. What are you guys, maybe advice would be to those? Like what maybe exciting use cases you would suggest looking into, or like what is the narrative you see evolving? Like maybe there is something you wanted to build but you don't have time. Like what would you say? What would you say to those who want to innovate and create something meaningful in the space? Maybe start with you, Lane.
Sure. I was smiling and laughing as you said things you want to build but you don't have time. I have got a really, really long list of those things. So if you're interested in building any of the things here, like please come find me. I think from my perspective, this topic came up on the previous panel, which was kind of user-owned AI. We think a lot about user ownership at Near. Your data, your assets, the whole AI stack, right? Where the model was trained, what parameters was it trained on, where the inference is running, is it running faithfully? And certainly something I'm thinking about as an end user of any product that's going to be trading on my behalf is exactly these things. I really want to understand the full stack, right? And the challenge here with a lot of AI stuff is even if you have like open weights, for example, we talk a lot about open weights models, the llamas, the DeepSeeks, et cetera. You don't really have a verifiable way to verify that that it was trained on a certain data set or using a certain set of parameters. And then again, when it comes to the inference side as well, one of the things these agents may need is control of a set of keys, to be able to actually execute crypto transactions. And so how do I know that what code is running and that it's running faithfully and that there's no way for it to exfiltrate my keys, for example. So we think a lot about this stuff at Near, and we have a stack of technologies. We have a subsidiary called Near AI that's very focused on building kind of verifiable private AI agent hosting. I mentioned in the beginning, this is the infrastructure side, the AI infrastructure side of Near right now. And it's really exciting. You can use modern TEE, so trusted execution environments and the latest generation of GPUs to actually give you cryptographic proof of, for example, faithful inference of a model. And like provable training is still kind of a research topic, but we're working on that as well to be able to prove the exact data set that was used to train your model. So these are some of the things that keep me up at night as a consumer and user of these AI technologies. And again, we're building heavily in all these areas. So talk to me or anyone from Near if that's interesting.
I think all this is related, but there's never enough infrastructure that you can build to actually support this stuff. And even though we're building apps on top of this, I think we would all agree that there's so much, the way that we do it could be done so much better if we just had access to certain resources. The thing that is top of mind for me would just be the data issue, and I feel like we're all building our own separate data pipelines right now. But maybe this is, you create like a verifiable yield source data set for certain vaults across these chains, and then maybe you get slashed or something for it if it's inaccurate. Some sort of mechanism, but that's open source, that is just generally just vault data, yield data, would be incredible, because I can tell you that there are 100 teams right now that are building apps on top of their own data pipeline that should be something that's public and open source verified.
Verifiability has been top of our minds since the inception of Giza, and since 2022 we've been building verifiable computation. We just launched an open source framework for zero knowledge machine learning that basically does what Lane says, but not with TEEs, but with ZK proofs. That's a super important vertical. I think it's going to get more and more important as we delegate more and more tasks to AI. And besides that, the field that we are operating in, the intersection of finance and intelligence, I think has a huge, vast options of use cases. So you should not be afraid to explore them. I think there's incredible, immense value in combining and coupling those things. And DeFi in itself, like the decentralized finance systems, in terms of intelligence, is still, I think, it's in its baby steps. It's far from where traditional finance is and was even. So I think we're in the right intersection. And this intersection right now is getting more and more utility driven. So we have passed I think the AI memes stage, where the people who thought we just take one popular technology and take another popular technology and just like mash them together and make a lot of money in the middle, kind of like self-cleansed out of the system. So if you're a builder and you want to build something tangible, I think this is the moment, and you should go for it.
Amazing. I hope you guys learned something new and it was insightful. Thank you for the panelists for the insights, and yeah, I think that's a wrap up. Please give a round of applause to amazing panelists.
Thank you, guys.